Welcome to episode 5 of My Thoughts. Today we're going to talk about some of the awkwardness of American history, especially the inaccuracies with the 1619 Project and the push of leftists to destroy pride in America. While the opening may sound potentially very right-wing, bear with. Facts will mete out the end result. So the basis of the 1619 Project is that America is systemically racist, founded on racism, and inherently structurally destructive to everyone except white people. There happen to be several inaccuracies with this and with the entire concept. The initial idea is that America was founded in 1619 with the arrival of the first African slaves to North America. Right off the bat, Jamestown was founded around 1619. It was far from being the first colony in North America. At the very least, one would have to concede the lost colony of Roanoke in Virginia right down the road. Further inconsistencies with that are that New Amsterdam, what we now know as New York, was recognized as a founded Dutch colony in 1607. I say this because research found it specifically looking for my family ancestry. Apparently, my first ancestor that I know of to arrive to the New World, or to the North American continent, arrived as a contracted resident farmer. Okay, so he wasn't really an indentured servant. He was a farmer. He initially, according to the book that cited the source, he saw the potential when he first saw the colony of New Amsterdam in 1607. By 1612, he had a prolific cattle farm in the 5th Ward of Manhattan, and was quite a prolific cattle breeder, and was actually listed as one of the best cattle breeders in the Dutch colonies. What they mean by colonies plural, come on, the Dutch got around. Either way, by the time his contract was up, his sponsor was allegedly begging him to renew, but he chose to go help found what we now know as New Jersey. The oldest colony in North America is actually St. Augustine, Florida. It was a Spanish colony. And of course, I'm sure there are many leftists, liberals, Democrats, etc., blah, 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 that would say, oh, well, that's Spanish, that's Hispanic, so they're brown, which just shows their ignorance because Spain is a European country. Spaniards are predominantly light-skinned individuals, typically called Caucasian. However, that is not completely accurate, as the Islamic Caliphate of Cordoba was the result of the Arabic invasion of the Iberian Peninsula and colonization. as well as the Moorish invasion and colonization. So the southern half of Spain, the southern portion of Spain, blasted Cordoba. I didn't write my notes out, so Cordoba is the only one coming to mind, were in fact colonized by both Moors, black Africans, and Islamic Caliphate of Arabic Africans. So, and these both decidedly predate Columbus's finding of North America. For those who want to say, well, you can't discover something that already existed, yes, you can. It is a problem with the English language. I could say I discovered a pizza place downtown because I did not know about it until I found it. No one else pointed it out to me. I was driving around when I saw their sign, but it already existed long before I ever lived in this area. So, it's a linguistic issue. Okay, so now that we've determined that in North America that we now call the United States, Jamestown was not the first colony. In point of fact, the entire 1619 project is a very ethnocentric anti-Anglican argument. In other words, it specifically argues against the English colonizers that are predominantly responsible for the United States. See, there's another one of those linguistic things. If you say primarily responsible for America, yeah, North and South America are both America as well. Central America, so saying America applies to a very large area. We know what is intended, which is to mean the United States. Now, the United States has a huge amount of influence from England and the British Empire, even though we were founded with Dutch, German. I'm not even going to count Irish and Scottish because, hey, sorry people, England pretty much owned them at the time. So, back to Jamestown in 1619. Yes, the first African slaves arrived to North America. Now, the facts that are left out of that are that they arrived on a Portuguese trading ship looking for a Portuguese colony, but the ship encountered some difficulty and took port at the new colony of Jamestown to get their bearings, get fresh water, and the English and the colony leadership confiscated these African slaves. Not because they wanted slaves. Come on, this is in the books. You can even find John Smith's First Souls in Virginia. Yes, that John Smith, the one with Pocahontas and all that happy horse pucking. John Smith wrote in his I could have that book right in front of me and I would still screw up the title. But the leadership of the Jamestown colony confiscated the African slaves because King James of England, different from King George, who we fought the revolution against, King James actually had passed a ruling for the United Kingdom, Great Britain. Pick your poison. They've changed the name, and we from outside there call them so many different things. Usually something like English bastards. he had passed a ruling that there would be no African slaves imported to the North American colonies. It was, in fact, illegal under English law to bring Africans to North America, to English colonies in North America. King James was attempting to phase out slavery. We know that that did not work because, come on, 1619, and here in America, we didn't officially end that until 1867. So, yeah, got like 250 years there that things changed. In fact, it was in the late 1600s. This just came up that I should mention it, so there was no way I could have written a note on it anyway. It was late in the 1670s or 1680s, before the later king, after James, changed that rule to permit the importation of African slaves. The humorous part to that, for all those people who want to claim that they believe white people are superior, no. African slaves, West African slaves, were imported to the American Southeast, places like Virginia and Georgia, because Irish and Scottish workers. Hey, some were brought in a slave capacity, some were brought in an indentured servant capacity, and for people like a certain cousin of mine that would argue, oh, they weren't treated as horribly. I would say forced prostitution pretty much just makes it across the board wrong. So the Scottish and Irish workers died quite readily in the fields because of the heat, humidity, and malaria that were prevalent in the southeastern colonies that would become the United States. The part that made the plantation owners choose to import West African slaves is that they were, to use an easy phrase, immune. A more complicated term would be that was already the kind of climate that they were from. Granted, we actually get cold in the southeastern United States that is not endemic to West Africa. I mean, come on, it's on the equator. So, for those people who think white people were superior, no. Plantation owners started purchasing and importing African slaves because they were physically superior to the task at hand, and Caucasians were an inferior workforce. Yeah, put that in your basket. Alright, so we've gotten past this point, getting up to the issue of the revolution being fought to maintain the slavery that the colonies were initially created to found, which, yeah, it's like, how can people say that with a straight face? So the American Revolution had absolutely nothing to do with the concept of race-based slavery. In point of fact, both sides offered freedom to Africans or African Americans, black folk. Hey, this is the 21st century. We now use the phrase black. They both sides, the English and the colonies, offered freedom to black people in exchange for military service fighting in the Revolution. Both sides. Come on. You can't say it's slave-based if both people are offering to end it for service. Now, the problem that shows up afterwards is that even though our founding fathers, all men are created equal, and that meant all humans, once again, it's a linguist thing, they still permitted slavery. The problem was not that they were hypocritical or racists. The problem was that specifically two states that I can name for you, Virginia and Georgia, and I believe South Carolina was one as well, insisted that slavery had to be permitted in order for them to ratify the Constitution and be part of the United States. Had states like Pennsylvania, New York, Rhode Island, had they been willing to take a more fractured view of attempting to found something, they may have fought against it. Instead of the 13 original colonies, 3 demanded that slavery be permitted. For those who can do the math, I think we can see that democracy failed in that respect. The bullying of the 3 created the submission of the 10. Now, there's a catch to that. Even though those founding states had lobbied to end any concept of slavery, they maintained it. You could actually, in 1790, you could purchase a slave in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, even though the citizens of Philadelphia had initially lobbied to have slavery done away with. The whole concept of arguing that less than 5% of the total voting populace owned slaves. Now, remember, voting populace consists of white male landowners. Less than 5% demanded it, but they got their way. So these are key components to the issue at hand. The 1619 Project's anti-American rhetoric is inherently flawed. Did America have problems? Yes. Did our ancestors commit what would today be called crimes against humanity? Yes. Well, so did Genghis Khan. So did the Chinese Empire. So did the Empire of Japan. So did every Islamic caliphate, to include some that exist right now. So the problem is not that America is fundamentally broken. The problem is that humans, as a species, suck. But in America, we have been striving to improve. We set our ideal goals far above where we're at, and we reach for them. Some people don't reach as high as others. And as a society, we have often failed to achieve our goals. But we have striven for those goals, and we continue to strive for them. That is what makes America great. That we do strive for these ideals, even though we stumble and fall. It's not how often you fall, it's how often you get back up again. So y'all have a great week, and we will talk to you again next time.